So I've chosen for a gospel reading today a passage from Luke's Gospel, chapter 7, verses 1 to 10. And it's the story of Jesus healing the servant of a centurion, a Roman officer. And this man had extraordinary faith. And it's interesting because he didn't even allow Jesus to visit him in his home, just like us today, that we're segregated and isolated in a sense, but the healing still happened. So here's the story. After Jesus had finished all his sayings in the hearing of the people, he entered Capernaum. Now, a centurion had a servant who was sick and at the point of death, who was highly valued by the centurion. When the centurion heard about Jesus, he sent to him elders of the Jews, asking him to come and heal his servant. And when they came, earnestly saying, "He is worthy to have you do this for him, for he loves our nation. In fact, he's the one who built us our synagogue." And Jesus went with them. When he was not far from the house, the centurion sent friends, saying to Jesus, "Lord, do not trouble yourself, for I am not worthy to have you come under my roof. Therefore, I did not presume to come to you myself. But just say the word, and let my servant be healed. For I too am under authority with soldiers under me. And I said to one, 'Go,' and he goes, and to another, 'Come,' and he comes, and to my servant, 'Do this,' and he does it." When Jesus heard these things, he marveled at him. Turning to the crowd that followed him, he said, "I tell you, not even in Israel have I found such faith." And when those who had been returned to the house, they found the servant well. Words inspired by God. St. Paul was arguably the greatest missionary of all time, certainly the greatest Christian missionary of all time. He spent the latter half of his life all over Asia Minor, in Turkey, and into Greece, talking about Jesus and about Christ consciousness. But Paul spent the last 2 years of his life under house arrest in Rome. But he was allowed to have visitors, and he continued to preach the good news for the last 2 years of his life. And arguably, you could say that Paul was probably the single greatest architect. And I was reminded of that last Sunday when we did our first, what I'm going to call a Zoom Mass. And about 80 people from all over the country joined us. And we created a new kind of Eucharistic community, what I'm going to call companions in diaspora. And I reminded us last Sunday that every single one of you is a priest, as much as the Pope of Rome is a priest. And I encouraged you to celebrate Eucharist in your own homes, to take the bread and the wine or the grape juice, maybe a candle, and to consecrate it yourselves. You can create the Christ presence as much as the Pope of Rome does in High Mass, in the Vatican. And I want you to do that again today. I'll remind you at various stages of the Mass, the offertory, the consecration, and the communion, that you are a priest of God and you can create Christ's presence in your midst. So last Sunday, I began to talk about the coronavirus and the invitation it extends us. And for the next 3 Sundays today, and for the next 2 Sundays, I'm going to continue to address this issue. This Sunday, I'm going to talk about what it means for us as families to deal with this issue. Next Sunday, I'll talk about what the nation to deal with this. And then the third Sunday, I'm going to talk about what does it mean for us as a global community to deal with this. But for today, I'm going to focus on the family, where you are in your own homes, either on your own or with your loved ones. And so if I were to give today's homily a title, I would call it Quarantine, Cellmates or Soulmates. Do you regard yourself as cellmates locked in the prison by this virus, or soulmates being given a retreat and a sabbatical to think about how to do life differently on planet Earth? And as Lawrence mentioned, normally we just do a Q&A on the third Sunday of the month. We're going to extend that now every Sunday as we do in the Zoom Mass. There'll be an opportunity for Q&A and people to contribute their own insights and their own inspirations. And as I treat these topics over the next 3 Sundays, I'm going to try to dance between looking at the spiritual and cosmological aspects on the one hand, and at the psychological and practical aspects on the other hand. And in today's homily, I'm going to make 5 main points. Firstly, I'm going to talk about life as a dream journey. Then secondly, I'm going to talk about the purpose of this journey. Thirdly, I'm going to talk about your identity, your self-identity on this journey. Fourthly, a roadmap for this journey. And then fifthly, some resources for your journey. So that's where we go this morning. So first, I want to look at life as a dream journey. I've said to you many, many times before that it is my opinion that life is actually a dream the ego is having. And the ego is a dream that the soul is having. And the soul is a dream that spirit is having. And spirit is a dream that source is having. So basically, we are characters in God's dream. And when I say a dream, I don't mean that it's made up. Dreams are absolutely real. Dreams are simply experiences we have in altered states of consciousness. And in fact, sometimes the alleged dream states bring us closer to ultimate reality, to God reality, than our alleged waking state. And in dreams, you know, we transcend space and time. There is no space, there is no time, and causation is different. I had a dream a few months ago about my grandfather, Daddy Jim. And in this dream, I'm back in 1956. So I've gone back 50 years and 6,000 miles to the east to be with Daddy Jim. And so time and space didn't exist. And in that reality, causation is totally different. In physical reality, causation is a very, very slow process. You think about something, you plan to do it, you get the pieces, you put them together, and finally you get the product. In a dream, you think something, and it's immediately there. And so dreams, when I talk about dreams, they're absolutely real. So life is this dream in which we are creating our reality because we are God in drag. We are characters in a dream that God is having. We are the ways in which God experiences incarnation or physicality. And then incarnation becomes a journey like any other journey. And so it has to have 4 elements. For any journey, you need a purpose for your journey. You need some kind of ID for the journey. You need a roadmap for the journey. And then you need some kinds of resources for the journey. And so they'll be the next 4 points I make this morning. So what is the purpose of this journey? And again, I keep saying to you again and again and again, every single one of us on planet Earth right now, all 7.6 billion people on planet Earth right now, we volunteered to be here on planet Earth right now. And we had 2 agendas. The first agenda is to evolve the individual soul, to become people who are loving in all circumstances. And this may take many, many iterations, many incarnations to achieve. And the second purpose is we are here to evolve the consciousness of the planet itself, to bring the entire planetary community into a kind of a Christ consciousness or into a Buddha nature or a Krishna mind, whatever word you choose to use for it. The problem is we come in here, you know, we volunteered to be here. We volunteered to be here right now, but we've forgotten all of these things. We come in here and we curse our luck. Why is this happening to us now? We volunteered precisely to be on planet Earth right now. Because as we came in, we only knew 3 things, it seems to me. We knew the past history of every soul with whom we were coming in. How did they perform in previous incarnations, including how did I myself perform previous incarnations? And we come in and we have a mission. We know what we're coming to do, and we know precisely the circumstances into which we are parachuting like commandos. We know these 3 things. But once we get here, it's improv theater. I had a client one time in my psychology practice who was a professional actor, and his specialty was improv theater, in which he and another actor would get on stage, And they would just ask the audience to throw them a word. You know, like I'm going to say redwood trees. And they would have to make up a play without any plot or without any script whatsoever, just talking to each other. And we're on planet Earth right now, and we've been thrown a word. And the word is coronavirus. There's no plot, there's no script. We're on stage in improv theater. And there are two rules, this man told me, to good improv theater. The first rule is you can never reject a line your partner on stage offers you. No matter how dumb it appears, you can't, no, give me a different line. I can't work with that one. You have to work with whatever line your partner has given you. And secondly, your job is to feed your partner lines that are going to make her look good. And her job is to feed you lines that are going to make you feel good. If you're trying to be a smartass and trip up your partner, the whole thing is going to fall on top of itself. If you feed each other lines that are really good and loving and full of potential, then the play will take off. But in this improv theater where we find ourselves now, there is no script and there is no plot. We are creating the script as we go along. We are creating the plot through the thoughts we have, through the words we speak, and through the actions we engage in. And so I'm going to give you just a very simple, little technique to help you do this right now. In my psychology practice, very often, I'll ask my clients to do the following exercise. And that's what it is. No matter what age you are right now, I want you sometime during this week to sit down and to divide your life into 7-year segments. 0 to 7, 7 to 14, 14 to 21, 21 to 28, etc. And for each segment, I want you to ask 3 questions of yourself. The first question is, who were the important players in my life during that particular segment? Secondly, what were the important events during that segment? And thirdly, what were the important lessons I learned during that segment? And very, very often, we don't learn the lessons at the time. It's only retroactively that we understand what the lessons might have been. And what I guarantee you is that if you do this exercise for every segment of 7 years right throughout your life, you'll find perhaps that the players changed from segment to segment. You started off with your parents and siblings, and then it was schoolmates, and then it was workmates perhaps, and then it was your own spouse and your own kids or friends or whatever. So the players will change throughout. And maybe the events will change. There'll be different events at different times, but you'll find that the same lessons keep repeating, because each of us signs up to learn maybe 2 or 3 very important lessons in each incarnation. Different life circumstances at different stages of our lives will offer us the opportunity for engaging with that particular lesson. So you'll find right throughout your life, even if you're in your 90s at this stage, that right throughout your life, the same lessons have been offered to you in different guises, but it's been the same invitation. So for me, that is the purpose of the journey. So it's a great exercise to find out, okay, what are the lessons I've been learning? And right now, what is the invitation of this particular event and this particular part of my life? So that would be my second point. My third point would be this. I have dual citizenship. I'm an Irish citizen and I'm an American citizen. And each of my passports say that I'm a male, I'm 6 feet 1 inch tall, I weigh 150 pounds, I have gray hair, and I have blue eyes. Now imagine I'm trying to go on a trip and I present myself at an airport trying to get on a plane, and I fish out my passport, and all of a sudden my passport says I'm female, I'm 5 feet 3, I weigh 100 pounds, I got red hair, and I got brown eyes. How far am I going to get? They won't even allow me on the plane. The problem is most of us are carrying faulty ID throughout our lives. We really do not understand who we are. But there's this great mantra in Hinduism that says, I have a body, but I am not my body. I have emotions, but I am not my. I have an intellect, but I'm not even my intelligence. And I add to that personally, I say, I have a personality, but I'm not even my personality. because personality is the interface between the soul and the environment which it finds itself. So the same soul in different incarnations can find itself in a female body with different ethnicity, from a different socioeconomic class, with a different, different denominational affiliation. Everything will change. And so the personality will adjust itself to meet the circumstances. But we have to realize that we are not our bodies, we are not our emotions, we are not our intelligence, and we are not even our personalities. So who are we if we're none of these things? Every one of us is a spirit in a space suit. Every one of us is a soul on safari on planet Earth. Every single one of us is a bite-sized piece of God who's volunteered for incarnation. And therefore, you were never born and you will never die. This spacesuit that you have, that was born, and at some stage you will shuffle off this mortal coil. But that is not you. You were never born and you will never die. Because life is not what happens between birth and death. Life is what happens between the emergence from the womb of God and the reunification back with God. Life is a safari. And sometimes, Westerners have this notion that a safari means some kind of exotic journey to East Africa to see the wild animals. In Swahili, the word, safari simply means a journey. It's not an exotic journey. But then again, it's the most exotic journey of all, because life itself is a journey that began in God's womb and only ends on God. In the same way that all the mothers among you carried a little infant in your womb for 9 months, and then you appear to be separated from it, somebody cut the umbilical cord. And what's the first thing you did? You took the baby and you put it on your breast, right next to your heart. And that simply is what evolution is about. Evolution is a single trajectory from the womb of God to the heart of God. So we need to realize that that's the identity we need to carry with us in this journey and through this period of time. It's my third point. The fourth point then I want to talk about a roadmap for the journey. I don't know if you can see outside here. I live in the forest about 10 miles from a little town called Healdsburg in northern Sonoma County, California. Now, suppose I wanted to drive from my home to, let's say, Denver, Colorado. And I get to my car, ready to begin the journey, and I reach into the glove box in order to pull out a map. And I find that the map I have in my glove box is a map of Ireland. Well, I'm obviously not going to be able to use that in order to get to Denver, where I live. So it is very important to have the right roadmap. So what do I mean by the roadmap? By roadmap, I mean what I call a personal cosmology. Every single one of us has an innate belief system. The problem is it has been unconsciously acquired. We got it from our parents, we got it from our teachers, we got it from the churches, we got it from the mass media. So it's been unconsciously acquired. When you put us in any situation, it is unconsciously accessed. And so very often, I don't know why I'm thinking what I'm thinking, or I don't know why I said what I said, or I don't know why I did what I did. The reason is my cosmology, my belief system, my paradigm, my philosophy of life, whatever term you want to put, has been unconsciously acquired and has not been unconsciously accessed. And so Socrates will say, the unexamined life is not worth living. So it behooves every one of us to bring to full consciousness the belief systems that drive our thinking, that drive our speaking, and that drive our acting. It becomes really, really important to really think through what are my core beliefs, because that is what will drive me, and heal me through this period of testing. It's my fourth point. And the fifth point is this. There's an advertisement, I believe, for Capital One credit card that says, what's in your wallet? And that's the question I asked myself and all of us this morning. What is in your wallet of incarnation? What resources are you carrying with you? And my belief system is this, that when we volunteer for incarnation, we come down bearing two kinds of gifts. The first kind of gift is the talents that you've been given. whether they're musical abilities, athletic abilities, mathematical abilities, whatever they are. The thing is, these talents do not belong to you. They belong to the world. So you're like a mailman with a bag of letters. The fact that the mailman is carrying the letters doesn't mean that the letters belong to the mailman. They do not belong to the mailman. They belong to the people whose names are on the envelopes. And the talents that you have, they do not belong to you. You are a mailman sent to planet Earth to service it in some way. So your talents are a gift you brought with you, not for you, but for the rest of us. And secondly, you came with a second kind of gift. And the second kind of gift was your problems. Every single one of us came down and we gave ourselves a gift. We decided to wrestle with 2 or 3 main problems during a particular incarnation. And this was our gift to ourselves. This was the guarantee that we wouldn't just sit down doing nothing, that we'd have to stretch and grow and heal and evolve. The problem is, most of us, we hoard our talents, we think they belong to us, we hold on to the mailbag and we won't deliver the letters, but we're very happy to project our problems onto other people and think that they are the problem, they have the issue. This is a great opportunity for us as we sit silently and reflectively in our homes to examine the talents we've been given. How am I going to use those talents during this period in order to serve the world, my family, my community, and my planet? How am I going to look at my own problems and see them as an invitation to growth? They're the way in which I will stretch and evolve. How can I use this period of time to see that? And to ask myself the question then again, am I regarding my family right now as cellmates locked in the prison of the virus? Are we soulmates who have an opportunity, a retreat time, a sabbatical to grow through this as individuals and as a community? And I'm going to make 2 practical suggestions right now. Working as I have with people who have anxiety and depression over the last 25 years as a psychologist, I've learned that the single most important thing to do for somebody who's anxious is to tell them keep to a regular daily schedule. And that involves get up at the same time, even if you're not going to work. Go to bed at the same time. When you get up, laugh a lot. Sing on the radio, or just sing in the shower. Exercise, particularly outside with the sun on your face, barefoot with the earth on beneath you. There are more nerve cells per square inch on the sole of your feet than in any other part of your body, because we are meant to go barefoot on Pachamama, on Mother Earth. Because with the negative ions that she gets from lightning flashes that energize the earth, she recalibrates all of the free radicals of our body. So get outside in the sunshine, barefooted, and exercise outside. Pray and meditate. And maybe pick up a new hobby. Why don't you think about writing your autobiography right now? You have some time to do it. Begin making notes for yourself. Write your autobiography. And the second suggestion I have is this. It's about communication. If you ever attended a Native American Indian powwow, there are 4 rules to the powwow. The first one is show up, you pay attention, you speak your truth without judging, attacking, or blaming, and you detach from the outcome. Show up, pay attention, speak your truth without judging, attacking, or blaming, and detach from the outcome. Now, I'm just going to focus on one of these pieces. The second one, pay attention. Listening, learning to really listen during this time in your home. Again, from my own experience as a psychologist, in my office in Los Altos, I had a big couch that would comfortably seat 2 people, very comfortably, and then a single seat. And I did a lot of couples counseling. And if I was dealing with a new couple whom I hadn't met before, as soon as they walked into the room, I would watch where they sit and how they sat. If they sat one person in the single chair and the other person on the couch, I could tell immediately this was a problematic relationship. They didn't want to be near each other. Even if they sat on the same couch together, I'd watch what way are they facing. Are they facing away from each other? Are they facing toward each other? And then I would look at, what their hands were doing. Are they sitting there like this, self-protected? Are they sitting there open-hearted? And then I would look at their eyes. Buddhism talks about two different kinds of gaze. It talks about soft gaze, where I am embracing you with my eyes, and harsh gaze, where I'm threatening you angrily. What is your body language telling you? And then once you begin to speak, it's, some people will just shout at each other. That obviously is not listening. Other people will keep interrupting each other. Even if they're not shouting, they'll keep interrupting each other. And that is not listening. And some people who think they're really good listeners will allow you to finish what you had to say. But when they respond, they'll only respond to the part they disagreed with. That is not listening. Real listening is that I sit beside you, I face you, my chest and the heart is open, my eyes are soft, I'm not shouting, I'm not interrupting you, and when you finish speaking, I'll respond to everything you said, because I'm there to learn as well as to teach. The foolish ones among us think that nobody can teach me anything, and the wise ones know that everybody can teach us something. So there is no conversation in which you could not learn something. And it is more important what you take away by way of learning from it than what you contribute by way of enforcing your opinion on somebody else. So this will become a very important practice, as you said, with your family in the time ahead, really learning to listen. So in conclusion, I would say that in my study of, cosmology, of geology, of history, and of psychology, I've never seen a significant evolutionary shift which has not been occasioned by some kind of a significant crisis. Things don't change radically unless a crisis precipitates it. I'll give you two just quick examples. The universe is about almost 14 billion years of age. The first generation of stars are much, much, much older than our sun. Our sun is only 5 billion years old. The first generation of stars had to live for billions of years, and then they went supernova, which means an extraordinary explosion. The whole star just burst asunder and scattered its elements into the cosmic void. And if it weren't for that, those scattered elements would not have constellated and created the second generation of stars and the planetary systems. There would be no planet Earth unless there had been a previous supernova. That was a cosmic crisis, one closer to home on our little planet. The first life forms that evolved on planet Earth were elementary single-celled protozoa. And they learned to feed off hydrogen, which is the most plentiful molecule in the entire universe. So they learned to source, hydrogen wherever they could find it. And finally, they discovered that water contained hydrogen. So they began to extract hydrogen from water to feed themselves. And indeed, they loved it. There's only one problem. When you separate hydrogen from water, you release oxygen. And oxygen was totally toxic to those elementary life forms. So it was like a murder-suicide pact. The more you ate, the more you poisoned. The planet 1.5 billion years to figure this out. And finally, it created a new kind of cell. We call it the mitochondria. That's at the core of every that could not only survive oxygen, it could metabolize oxygen. And in fact, all of the energy of our body is oxygen that has been metabolized by the mitochondria because it cracked the puzzle. This opportunity for us right now is another opportunity to be creative. And when this crisis has passed, and it will pass, every one of us wants to be able to look back and say with real, real gratitude, this was the best thing that ever happened to us. Namaste. So let's open it up for Q&A.
If you wish to ask a question, then unmute. And for the adventurous among you, if you find the participants button and it brings up a screen, you can raise your hand, whereupon I will call on you. And just to show how that works, I will call on Waven, who has the first to raise his hand. Go ahead.
Hey, Father Sean, question for you about
Sure,
that, right?
Sure. Right.
If you're bored and you don't want to be here anymore and you want to take some AP classes to work through whatever issues you have so you don't have to come back anymore, can you do that? Is there a website to go finish up the classes really quick?
One of the things I'm reading, Wevan, is that, colleges all over the country, they have been doing this actually before now. They have made online classes available. In fact, the Ivy League schools, the top schools like Stanford have been doing this now for many, many years. They've been offering free classes online to anybody who's interested. And now that the entire student body has been moved off campus, I'm sure that there are many, many ways, many opportunities for people for any kind of a hobby, whether it's an intellectual pursuit or it's gardening or it's artwork. There are people online who are freely offering the ability to learn and to pursue these objectives. So I'm sure that even a brief internet search will give you whatever it is, Robin, that you're interested in.
Robin, I have a suspicion you may have asked that metaphorically. Is that true?
Yes, Father Sean. I don't know if I meant it metaphorically, like, can you wrap up your lessons really quick so you can just go home and never come back?
He wants the AP class in karma.
Thank you, Lawrence.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Lawrence, for the interpretation. So you're saying you want to do it in this last incarnation, Robin?
One and done.
Okay.
Done.
One and done. There are two answers to that question. The first thing is you can wake up in any incarnation of your choice if you're prepared to do the hard work involved in doing it. But the second one is this. There's a place beyond personal salvation and getting off the wheel. And that is what Buddhism will call the bodhisattva vow. Bodhisattvas are people who've worked off all their personal karma. They've learned whatever planet Earth has to teach them to learn. But they keep coming back for the rest of us. They're the Jesus Christs of the world. They're the Mahatma Gandhis of the world. They're the Mother Teresas of the world. They're the Buddhas of the world. And they keep coming back for the rest of us. So I put this to you. You can, if you wish, and you want to do the hard work, get off and get an A+ in your final test right now. Or you could decide you want to become a teacher, not just a student. You want to come back. You want to become a teacher. You want to become a healer. And so you're going to come back to this, planet of ours again, and you're going to be here for the rest of us until all sentient beings wake up. Your choice, bro.
Shit, I hate the fact that you said that. Okay.
Good.
Dang
good.
it. Dang it.
This is Susan.
Good, Susie.
John, I wanted to know, was now a good time to make my request, or should I wait till a little bit later in the mass?
Why don't you do it now? So Susan has a request I told her she's on the front lines. She's an OR nurse at UCSF, and she was going to make this request during the prayers of the faithful. Go for it now, Susie.
So my request is that during your prayers in the week, if you can visualize and perhaps manifest, there's 4 things that I'm requesting. One is that if you can just visualize the curve and visualize it flattening. The second is that a treatment that is effective will be found and will be effective. The third is that the personal protective equipment, also known as PPE, for all healthcare workers will be materialized, that they will come and be in plentiful. And the fourth is the safety for our most vulnerable populations, the elderly and those with chronic illnesses will be safe during this time. So I ask if you would just please visualize those 4 things and manifest them in your prayers. That'd be great.
Thanks, Susie. Brilliant.
Go ahead, Kizzy.
My question is, I feel like if you could, would love to hear you speak to those of us who vacillate between finding a sense of peace in the words you speak and the soul's journey and the opportunity and the possibility of remaking and seeing the opportunity of growth, and then the frustration of the wickedness at play and the frustration of those who are in their soul's journey making negative choices that are impacting billions, and the mental weakness of so many, and the inability to support, like why aren't tests available when there are tests to be available, and why, the new world order and all of the things that seem inevitable in some sense, where I feel like a sense of I chose this, but at the same time seeing I guess, the wickedness and having a hard time. I vacillate between a serenity and frustration around a trajectory that seems inevitable as far as certain people in power, and I think that, anyways, I hope you understand my sentiment.
Totally. So this is very, very normal in any crisis situation, Kizzy. And what we have to remember is that, reality is created by our perceptions. There's no ultimate reality out there except God. Everything is perception. And perception is created either through our sensorium or through our intellectual processing. But nobody has a handle on reality. No one perspective is the true perspective. And so we have to be really, really careful the data we feed our minds. Garbage in, garbage out. So one of the suggestions I've made months and months and months ago, long before this began happening, is that it is very important for people to do news fasting. I don't say that you have to cut yourself off completely. Obviously, you have to stay informed. But you need to stay informed with critical thinking, and you need also to do it, just take little pieces at a time. If you're sitting constantly in your sitting room being deluged by negative activity, by not just talking heads anymore, but shouting heads at each other, then you're filling yourself with distress. If you want to feed your soul and you want to kind of create a reality, then you have to begin perceiving differently, which means that you have to surround yourself with different kinds of data, different kinds of sensory experiences, different kinds of intellectual pursuits. Be very careful what you listen to. Go into nature. Look at how nature solves its problems. There are redwoods out there that are 2,000 years old. They've seen, the Black Plague. They've seen World War I and World War II. They're standing there serenely. And so you have to be really, really careful that you don't feed your mind with negative ideation or even negative interpretation. In some senses, every player on the planet, no matter what decisions they're making, whether their contributions appear to be negative or positive, they're creating the drama, which is allowing us to radically rethink the way we're doing life on planet Earth. And if it weren't for people making stupid choices right now, the rest of us would continue to be asleep. And in fact, my fear actually is that if this virus, ends too quickly, we'll just go back to sleep again, the whole lot of us. That we have to wake up enough to stay awake when the crisis is past, and the crisis will pass. The question is, how have I been feeding my mind and my family? What are my senses taking in? What are my perceptions doing? Don't make judgments apart from making, critically thinking about the data to which you are exposed. But expose yourself to data, poetry, or art, or nature, which is feeding your soul and giving you a sense of who you are as an eternal being. Not just, as in your case, the mother of 2 little children, in Austin, Texas. Think bigger, think eternally, and think that all the players on the planet are part of this extraordinary psychodrama, which is an invitation to us individuals and to the global community to do life radically differently. And if there weren't a crisis, we wouldn't be waking up.
Thank you.
Sure,
I'd like to call on Andrea for the next question.
Yes, hello.
Right,
Hello, Father Sean. I really appreciated your sermon so much, and I definitely feel the calling from God that this is a unique opportunity for some of us to really wake up and also kind of do deep inner work, and also, time to bond as a family. And I'm sort of going back and forth because my daughters are away from me. They're 22 and 25, and I feel as a mother, a deep need to have them come home and for us to be a family. But my youngest daughter, her college closed, and the president of the college encouraged all students, even those off campus, to go home. But she's sort of resisting that because she's in a house full of friends.
Sure.
So I guess I don't know if you can, I'm feeling torn between wanting family time with her. I don't know what I'm saying. I'm doing a lot of great things on my own, but it is hard to stay by yourself, indefinitely.
And that's one of the invitations that this crisis is opening up for us, Andrea. And it's been, you know, repeated all over the world. And so we have to learn to create community in the best way possible, given the kind of restrictions and limitations under which we operate right now. And that's typical of the spiritual journey. The spiritual journey is not learning to blossom under ideal circumstances. The journey is about blossoming under any kinds of circumstances. And so, you know, it's very easy to watch a flower in a planted garden blossom when you're giving it attention and watering it and tearing the weeds out. It's a very different thing to see a flower in the middle of the wilderness out of nowhere, popping its head out of nowhere and struggling for air and for sunshine with a host of other competitors and still managing to survive. All of them still managing to survive. So you and others are going to learn how to create new forms of community. And we're lucky in a sense that one of the great gifts of modern technology is that we can create these kinds of communities. So don't dwell on what you can't have.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
So with that, I'd like to call on Artemis.
My question has to do with kids, and I suspect I know some of what you might say, but if you could speak maybe directly about how to help kids navigate this time, because we have one kid in our family.
Okay.
She's an only kid, so we're all doing amazingly well given the circumstances, and so grateful to all be together. But we all have our own waves of anxiety, and I see we're seeing with her that some of that's due to we're spending more time with screens because lessons that are available on screens, her ability to connect with her friends now is only through screens. We try to do some games together that are on screens, and we've seen that sometimes that means her anxiety goes way up, even though those things are some of how she's connecting and you know, feeling more at ease. So I know there's a balance, but if there's anything, I really loved your suggestions about being outside in nature. And
great, Lovey. Great question, Artemis. So obviously, you know, the interesting thing is that children learn much more from what we do as parents than what we say as parents. So all of the injunctions and advice in the world, it can be really, really helpful. But as children watch how the adults are behaving, that's primarily what's going to make them hopeful or anxious. So if they see the parents fretting and constantly discussing worst case scenarios, the kids are going to pick up on that, even if you tell them, it's going to be fine, honey, it's going to be fine. It's not what you say to them that's going to make the difference. It's how you behave in their presence. And you have to behave in their presence, not in a kind of a false way. It has to be in alignment and resonant with what's actually happening inside in you. And so you have to again and again and again identify with your soul. And if you identify with your soul, your personality will reflect that. Your actions will reflect that. And the kids will pick up on that. And that will be their guide stones. So maybe 10 times every hour, you have to remind yourself you're an eternal being who was never born and will never die. And you volunteer to be here right now in order to grow the planet, grow your family, and grow yourself. So again and again and again, you have to come back into center, back into center, back into center. And the kids will pick up on that. And then when you speak to them, there'll be a congruence and a resonance and an alignment between who you are, what you're thinking, how you're behaving, and what you're saying to them.
Thank you so much.
Sure, Pat.
And this is actually Joe who wants to ask a question.
Sure. Welcome, Joe.
Your ideas from your counseling experience I found very practical and easy to relate to, and I thank you for those.
Sure.
I've always been a little frustrated with the other ideas of pre-birth contracts, and I want to know how these really affect us. This idea affects us practically, number one, and number two, what source or evidence do you derive this idea of a pre-birth contract from?
Okay.
But I'm more interested in the practical, why you even bring it up, because everything else you give is so practical and helpful.
Right.
Other isn't.
Right. So I'm glad that the practical stuff is making sense to you, Joe. The reason I say the other stuff is because it's my deepest truth. What I say to you practically comes from my spacesuit. It comes from my intellect. It comes from my education. They're all artifacts of this present incarnation. They do not come from my core essence. What I said to you about a preconception contract and the fact that we volunteered to be here now, this comes for me from 56 years of meditation. It comes from, trans-dimensional experiences I have during Eucharist. And so your reality is going to come from your deep, deep inner belief system. And that is my core belief system. Long before I was Sean O'Leary, born in Cork in October 1946. This is who I am. This is my deepest truth. And I can no more stop saying that than that I can pretend that I don't have an Irish accent. If I can translate that into practical steps, that's a bonus. And that's really, really good. But if there's anything that I would wish to offer and to gift the listeners this morning, it's the core inner vision. That's the place that's going to shift you. The practical, steps you're going to take, that's good. That's going to help you on a day-to-day basis. But unless you shift the interior cosmology into a place of alignment with your core essence, then external circumstances will continue to trip you up.
I'd like to call on Joy.
Okay, so this would be Joy Apple from Davis. Real quickly, I want to thank Annika for inviting me specifically, personally, this morning at about 9:28 to come to Mass. Anyways, and Sean, thank you for the homily. I took notes on it. I loved it. And Susan, thank you for the 4 very specific things we can pray on and visualize. Took notes on those too, and I really, really appreciate those. And so I don't have a specific question, except want to say thank you to everyone. And I'll be praying for everyone, and blessings to all of you.
So Joy, continue to make music. You're one of my favorite musicians. Keep doing it.
Thank you. I definitely am. My friend and I actually went outside about 18 feet away from each other roughly and played out between our 2 apartment buildings the other day.
Beautiful.
It was really fun. So,
awesome. Awesome.
Take care, you guys. I'm still playing lots more music than usual even.
Great, lovely.
Lots of time. Take care, everybody. Love to all of you.
I'd like to call on the Makachis.
Oh, brilliant.
Yeah, Sean, you had mentioned improv and sort of along the lines that things are meant to be instead of just coincidences.
All right.
I wanted to suggest an experience we had the other night. Timur, Joey, and Lisa and I have gone to Bats Improv in San Francisco.
Right.
Good time. It's BATS. And Joey can tell a little bit about what they just started right in light of the coronavirus.
Well, they did it on Zoom, which is really interesting. So stuff like this, and there was they had an audience of 300.
Wow.
It was really cool. They just listened to each other, and they just did exactly what you're supposed to do during improv, except it was over online. And I think that's just like stuff that you can just see people coming together during this and still creating art, which is really awesome.
Yeah, and it actually benefits Bats Improv somewhat, and it's good humor, and as you mentioned, that's something maybe that's good medicine.
So hey, I still remember you as a small child at the children's masses, in Palo Alto, and I could see even then that you were a gifted public speaker and actor, and so you've got to study that in college. So thank you for bringing that to our attention today.
Of course.
Thanks to you, bro.
Warvin says he doesn't want to come back, but he's back here now with another question. Go ahead.
Aloha.
Aloha, Father. Hey, Father Sean, I'll make it quick. If indeed we choose most, if not all, of our life circumstances when we incarnate, do we choose how we die and the venue of how we exit? And if so, given this corona thing, maybe I chose that way to leave, right? That's cool.
Great. That's a great question. I really believe that part of our, what I call a preconception contract, is we build in possible exit strategies at the end of an incarnation, but we leave ourselves a choice of several possibilities. So, but it's the soul that makes the determination. So I may come to a situation in my life. I've been close to death at least 3 times. I had a very, very bad cholera when I was in Kenya and almost died and didn't. I had carbon monoxide poisoning in my little cabin up here about 15 years ago, and I survived that. So I had one other very close encounter. So I believe that the soul nation, okay, you could exit it right now, but you know, you haven't learned your lesson sufficiently. You could learn a lot more, or maybe there's something you could contribute. So we're gonna say, no, we're gonna bypass this particular, you know, exit point. But there will come an exit point when it's the last stop on the train, and then you're off. But I really believe we do. We build in not just one possibility, but several possible exit strategies.
And last follow-up, we typically don't leave until we're complete then, in many ways.
We can abort the mission.
Right.
Abort the mission. That's not leaving according to the plan. You can do it. And you know, you have to deal with that subsequently. I don't believe in hell, but if you leave lessons unlearned and you create a whole bunch of anxiety and for people left behind, you're going to have to deal with that at some stage in a subsequent incarnation.
Shoot, maybe I'll stay a little bit longer then.
Good, stay with us. We need you.
Thank you so much. This is Eva. I am Susan's sister. I first want to thank her very much for inviting me here this morning. And Father Sean, thank you so much. Your homily was remarkably inspiring in this time where my anxiety tends to fluctuate through the roof and then okay. So for the most part, I am. And thank you again. Thank you to everybody. It's really, really been quite the experience for me this morning. And thanks, Susie.
Thank you, Eva. Any sister of Susie is a sister of mine.
Thank you, Father. Thank you.
I'd like to call on Annika.
Hello. Good morning, everyone. Hi,
Morning,
Father.
Annika.
Peace and blessings to all. Question for you, Father Sean. With all that we're going through together as a world, how can we create global coherence? What are some practices or things we can do individually on our own time to create healing energy and global coherence from the heart, or whatever you suggest? I welcome.
So you beat me to the punch, Annika. So I'm planning on doing a series of these homilies. So today dealt with, you know, family situations and how to kind of accept the invitation, you know, of being isolated as families. Next Sunday, I'm going to talk, how do we do that as a nation? And then the third Sunday, I'm going to talk about how we do that as a global community. But obviously, you know, just to kind of, to tease it a little bit, all change begins with the self. We can't change a nation if we are not changed ourselves. We can't change the world if we're not changing ourselves. So all transformation begins with the self. And all self-transformation begins, you know, with inner knowledge. I did a homily several weeks ago that I think I titled it something like The Journey from Self-Awareness to Self-Transcendence. So maybe you might revisit that if you go onto my website. It was maybe 4 or 5 weeks ago, that there are particular stages as we move from self-awareness to self-transcendence. It goes through self-awareness, maybe self-regulation, you know, reflection, you know, self-improvement, and then finally self-transcendence. And I talk through those stages. But ultimately, it all begins with your understanding of who you are. And from there on out, you can make the differences. So as I speak subsequently about what we could do as a nation and what we can do as a globe, it'll all be predicated on the changes that every single one of us is prepared to make in our own personal self-transformation. So everything I said today, you know, I'm going to build upon, because that's the foundation upon which the other two pieces are going to be subsequently built.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Annika.
For those of you new here, Sean's website is spiritsinspacesuits.com. All of Sean's previous homilies going back many years are there. Joanna.
I just want to say that that it's really not a question so much as I'm really grateful that we have this for each other, and that we have being able to communicate via email and texting, everything else is really helping me. And I look so forward to this Mass, and I'm trying to understand the needs of the community and people in it at this time. So Sean, I'm so grateful that you set this up, And it's a question about, are we gonna be able to sing the Lay Your Hand song for Ingrid at the end of the Mass?
Got your phone call, and I rang Ingrid in the hospital. She didn't pick up, but I went to voicemail and I sang the Lay Your Hands in full to her. So she has it in her voicemail and she can play it as frequently as she wishes.
Oh, good. Thank you. Thank you. So I'm grateful for this, and thank you so much, Sean, and everyone.
Sure, sure.
Wavin, do you have a final question?
Yeah, I have one from the iPhone people. They're part of our Pacifica crew. They're
Okay.
Lars and Desiree Green. Their question, Father Sean, is how can we connect more into the core inner vision that you mentioned?
Okay. I would say there are some very basic practices, Wavin. The greatest teacher I know is nature. So if you get the opportunity to be out in nature, particularly alone, if you're with people and you're talking, there's a whole bunch of stuff you won't see and you won't hear. If you get out there on your own, you'll see nature's myriad of miracles. You'll see the ways in which nature responds to whatever insults are thrown at it by human beings. It responds not angrily, but creatively. And so if you just pay attention, you're going to learn a whole lot from being in nature. The second one being in deep meditation. Meditation where the essence of all meditation, I don't care whether you do Hindu or Buddhist or Jewish meditation or Christian meditation, the essence of all meditation is the disidentification with the ego. And so if you have a practice of meditation where on a regular basis you disidentify with your body, you disidentify with your emotions, you disidentify with your intellect, and you disidentify even with your personality, now you're at the core of your contentless consciousness or God awareness. So that's a beautiful practice. If you're lucky enough to be around little children, particularly children under age 4, and to join them in their games, because their imagination is a direct line to source. I've said this many times to you. Imagination is not the same thing as fantasy. Fantasy is the faculty that allows you to make up stuff which is not real. Imagination is the faculty that allows you to volitionally shift your state of consciousness, enter into dimensions, other dimensions, interact with energies and entities that reside in those other dimensions, learn from them, and then bring that back learning, bring it back and cross-fertilize it with your waking state of consciousness. So these will be just a few simple practices that allow you to access who you really are.
I wanted to just comment and thank Father Sean for saying something that really touched me. And you said that you almost hope that this crisis doesn't end too soon, because if it does, we have a danger of falling asleep again. And it sounds right now counterintuitive, meaning we all want it to go away or to solve or to heal. But I have a feeling that the deepest healing will happen if we can pray for the strength and endurance and wisdom to augment the love any way we can create it, to and feel it and unite together to experience that, and that would make the shift. But I don't know honestly how to do it individually by myself.
Yeah, Nina, thank you so much for that. You know, I hesitated before I made that statement during the homily, because it seems like, you know, it was almost like a curse. It was meant as
No,
an
I didn't see it as a curse. I
Good.
saw it as a solution.
Great, yes, because that's what it is. That's where it's coming from for me. Because I've seen so often in my psychology practice that problems which are solved too quickly don't last. People go back to the same kinds of behavior again and again and again. It takes a significant crisis of significant duration before people wake up enough to really make significant, long-lasting changes in their lives. And so it's a balancing act between having the patience and the resilience to survive the crisis, and at the same time to realize that it's, by experiencing it over a period of time, we totally wake up, and now as individuals, as a nation, and as a global community, we're beginning radically re-examining how we've been doing life on planet Earth, particularly since the Industrial Revolution. And I'll talk about that in the next talk. There have been tremendous advantages and tremendous benefits accruing from it, and there's been a huge price to pay for it. And so my prayer is that we know precisely, what we need in order to wake up and stay awake. However long that is, that's how long the crisis is going to last. Because we're at a stage of planetary evolution when we're meant to make the next shift. I've been saying this for 30 years, that in the same way that, early hominids bifurcated into Cro-Magnon and into Neanderthal, we're at a bifurcation point as Homo sapiens sapiens between what I call Homo sociopathicus, where we go back to doing business as usual, or Homo spiritualis, where we make a giant leap. It'd be one small step for humankind, one giant leap for planet Earth. To butcher what said.
Thank you.
Carol?
I'm pretty much self-isolating because I'm going through immunotherapy again.
Okay.
But when I do go to the doctor, they're taking all the protocols. This is over at Stanford and Palo Alto Med. I'm very impressed with how they're doing things. So I think people don't need to worry so much about going into a medical setting like that. I just want people to realize that they're doing everything they can and they're doing a great job.
Karen?
Oh, so I had a question about time spent in nature.
Right.
Because when I'm outdoors, if I'm not hiking, when I'm outdoors, I'm working, right? I'm doing things. And so it's a kind of blend of, I guess I wanted to know what you thought about the differences between those two things, because when I'm out gardening, there's a kind of switching back and forth between the practical, what something needs, and kind of talking to the plant about what it needs. And then kind of going back into what I think of as more of a practical real world situation, but bringing that back. And so it's do you understand what I'm trying to ask? That
Totally. Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. So you're a mother, Karen, you have 3 kids.
Mm-hmm.
You know what it's like, that sometimes kids need to see you, and sometimes they just need to feel you. Sometimes they just want to sit in your lap and put their heads on your breast. They're not seeing you anymore. They may be, just daydreaming or whatever, but they just want to feel you. When you go out into nature, you can watch what nature is doing. You can look at stuff. You can listen to the birds, or you can just have your feet on Pachamama. You can just be in touch, sitting in her lap. It really doesn't matter what modality you use, as long as you're connected.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm going to make 2 comments, and I'm going to call on Patricia. One is, whenever Rhea and I have sat out in the garden, it's always amazing to sort of just watch the birds fly through, something one rarely does. And then secondly, there's a lot of stars out at night. Just lying, if all you've got is a garden or a balcony, you can lie out there when it gets dark and just watch the skies. Something that ancient people did all the time, which is why they understood it, and we rarely do. With that, I'd like to call Patricia.
Hi, everybody.
Hi, Patricia.
Sean. So I love being in nature, and I'm very blessed to have a very prolific garden right now with all the flowers are in full bloom. And it's just been such a blessing to be able to spend time in my garden, because it gives me such peace. I mean, I just feel so uplifted, and I see the birds and the bees and the color and life, and it's just been such a gift.
So it's 11 o'clock. We'll have one last question, and this is your last incarnation, Marvin. Go.
Thanks. Last question, Father Sean. Wouldn't it be a lot easier if we just didn't have our hard drives wiped clean when we came and incarnated?
Okay, it's a great question. The thing is, they're not wiped dry. They're not wiped clean, Marvin. If you go back to the first 2 years of your life, Some of the most formative experiences you've had happened during the first 2 years of your life. You don't have conscious recall over them, but there are major factors in who you became. So the fact that, you know, all of our past incarnations are hardwired into who you are the next time you come around. So even if you don't have conscious recall over them, they've gone into making you who you are. So you've benefited, you've grown, you know, and you've evolved because of these experiences, even if you can't consciously bring them back in this incarnation.
And you can tap them in the Akashic records.
Yes, there are ways of going back there and tapping them. And for a lot of people, they can't. Whether they can or they can't, you know, they've been hardwired by those experiences, and they are who they are because of those experiences which they had.